Most people using travel points are losing about half their value, and they have no idea it's happening. They think they're doing everything right, signing up for cards, earning points, booking flights and hotels, and it all looks like it's working. You see the confirmation, your flight is booked, your hotel is covered, and it feels like that was free. But what you don't see is what you just gave up to get it. Because behind that free trip, you may have used twice as many points as you needed, missed better offers, or redeemed them in one of the worst possible ways. And now the value is gone. We were about to do the exact same thing. We had the points, we found a flight, it looked like a great deal, and we were seconds away from booking it until we caught something that completely changed how we used points. And if we hadn't, we would have lost most of the value we worked hard to earn. So in this video, I'm going to show you how we use our points, what we look for, what we avoid, and how we turn them into real travel without wasting them. If you want to actually make your points work, make sure you're subscribed because this is where most people get it wrong. So let's break down where this actually goes wrong, because this isn't about people doing something crazy. It's normal behavior. It's what most people are taught to do. And that's exactly why it's so expensive. Here's what this usually looks like. You've been earning points. They've been building up. You're excited to finally use them. So you go book a flight. You search your route. You see a points option. It says something like use 45,000 points. And you think, that sounds about right. You don't question it. You don't compare it. You don't check the cash price. You don't look at other options because it feels simple. Use points equals saving money. And that's where the biggest mistake happens. Because what you don't realize is that that same flight might cost 30,000 points somewhere else, or even less. Or the cash price might be low enough that using points makes no sense at all. And this keeps happening for one reason, convenience. Go with the first option because it's easy, because it's right in front of you, and because it looks like a good deal. Convenience is where most of the value gets lost. And this is the part that makes it dangerous. It still feels like you won. You booked a flight, you didn't pay cash, your points went down, so mentally you feel like you saved money. But you didn't save as much as you could have. And this isn't just one mistake. It adds up. You do this with flights, then hotels, then another trip. And over time, you lose hundreds, sometimes thousands, just in missed value. And here's why most people never catch it. There's no alert, there's no warning, no message saying you did it wrong. It just happens quietly. And because the trip still happens, you think everything worked. So the problem isn't that people aren't using points, it's that they're using them without a system. And without a system, you lose value every time. So once we realized this, we had to completely change how we think about points. Not just earning them, but what they're actually for. So once we realized how easy it is to lose value, we had to change one thing, how we think about points. Not how we earn them, how we use them. Because most people think about points like this. Points equal money. So they treat them like cash. If something costs 50,000 points, they assume that's what it's worth. And that's a mistake. Because points don't have a fixed value. They change depending on how you use them. And that's why two people can use the same number of points and get completely different results. Same points, different outcome. So instead of thinking of points as money, we think of them as leverage. What that means is simple. We don't use them everywhere. We use them where they matter most. Points aren't there to save you $20 or $50. They're there to remove $500, $1,000, or $2,000 expenses. And that's a completely different way of thinking about them. We're not trying to use points. We're trying to replace expensive things. So think about a trip. What are the biggest costs? Flights, hotels, and that's where the pressure is. That's what breaks the budget. And that's exactly where we focus. So if something only saves us a little bit, we ignore it, even if it's easy, even if it's available, because that's where people lose value. Just because you can use points doesn't mean you should. So now we run everything through one question. Does this remove a real expense? If the answer is yes, we look at using points. If the answer is no, we usually pay cash. And this one shift fixes almost everything. You stop wasting points, you stop guessing, you stop taking the easy option, and now you start getting real value. So we're not trying to use points everywhere, we're trying to use them where they matter. We're not trying to redeem often, we're trying to redeem them well. Because using points isn't the goal, using them right is. So now that we know how to think about points, let's start to talk about where they actually create the most value, starting with flights. Because this is where points can be extremely powerful, but it's also where people lose the most value. Most people do this. They search for a flight, see a points option, click redeem, and they're done. But what they don't realize is they just took the first option, not the best one. And with flights, that mistake can cost you a lot, thousands of points or hundreds of dollars in value. So we follow one simple rule. High cash price, consider points. If a flight is cheap, $80, $120, we usually pay cash. But when it gets expensive, $400, $600, $1,000, that's where we stop and look at points. Now this is where most people get stuck, because now you know you should compare options, but where do you actually find them? And this is where people either give up or just take whatever they see first. So one of the tools that we use is Daily Drop Pro. Not because it's fancy, because it helps us avoid bad redemptions. It shows us the better flight options, different ways to use points, and when something is actually a good deal. So instead of guessing, we can see what actually makes sense. But you don't need to use this tool, you just need to know what to look for. So here's what we're checking. How many points does this flight cost? What's the cash price? Are there better options? And sometimes the answer is obvious, but sometimes the difference is huge. You might see one option for 50,000 points and another for 30,000 points. Same route, same destination, completely different value. And if you don't compare, you'll never see that. We've had flights where the cash price was high, points made sense, and using points removed a major expense completely. That's where this strategy works. When you do this correctly, you're not guessing, you're not rushing, you're making a decision based on value. But when you don't do this, you click the first option, you move on, you never realize what you missed. So with flights, we don't look for a way to use points. We look for the best way to use them. And that difference is where the value is. So flights are one side of this. Now let's talk about hotels, because this is where you control your budget over time. The goal is the same, avoid wasting points. If you've ever used points before, tell me, did you compare options or just redeem? So now we'll talk about hotels, because this is where people lose money slowly, not in one big hit, but over time. Flights feel expensive, but hotels don't always feel that way. It's $150 a night, $200 a night. It doesn't seem crazy, but over a week, that's $1,000, $15,000. And that's where budgets start breaking. Now, here's what people do. They see a hotel option, use points, book it. And again, they don't compare. They don't check what it costs in cash, what other options exist. They assume that's a good deal, and that's where the value disappears. So we follow the same rule as flights. High cost, consider points. If the hotel is cheap, $80, $100, we usually pay cash. But when it's $200, $300, $400 a night, that's when we look at points. But hotels are a little different than flights because this isn't just one decision, it's multiple nights. So even a small difference multiplies quickly. Save $50 a night over 5 nights, that's $250. And now that matters. Now, just like flights, this is where people get stuck. They know they should compare, but what do you actually look at? And this is where people either guess or just take the first option again. And just like flights, we'll use Daily Drop Pro to compare hotel options too. But the goal is the same. Stop wasting points. You don't need the tool, you just need to compare. So here's what we check. Points cost per night, cash cost per night, total cost over the stay. And sometimes paying cash makes more sense. And sometimes points remove a major expense. We've had hotel stays where the nightly rate was high. Points made a lot of sense. And over multiple nights, that removed a huge cost. When you do this correctly, your trip feels stable. Your budget feels controlled. You're not reacting, you're planning. So with hotels, we don't just look at one night. We look at the entire stay because that's where the real cost is. So now you've seen flights, hotels, and where points actually create value. Now let's talk about where people lose the most value without ever even realizing it. This is the part nobody talks about because these options are everywhere. They're easy and they look like a good deal, but they're not. Because once you have points, the system starts offering you ways to use them right away with no effort, no thinking required. And that's exactly the problem. You see things like gift cards. Use your points for $200 in gift cards. And it feels like that's real money. But here's what's actually happening. You're getting some of the lowest value possible. You're trading valuable travel leverage for discounted cash. And once you do that, the value is gone. Same thing with Amazon or using points to shop. Click, redeem, done. It's easy, it's fast, and it's one of the worst ways to use your points. Convenience is where value disappears. And even inside travel, you can still lose value because sometimes the first option you see inside a portal isn't the best one. And if you don't compare, you're doing the same thing just in a different place. So why does this keep happening? Because it's simple, because it's fast, because it feels like a win, and because nobody tells you not to do it. And this is where it gets dangerous. You start telling yourself, it's fine, at least I'm using my points, better than letting them just sit there. But that's not the right question. The question isn't, did I use my points? The question is, did I use them well? Because using them poorly is still losing value. And here's what people don't see. This isn't a one-time mistake. It adds up. If you lose a little here and a little there, and over time, you lose hundreds, sometimes thousands, just in missed value. So we don't ask, can we use points here? We ask, should we use points here? And we run everything through one filter. Does this remove a real expense? If the answer is no, we don't use points. Even if it's easy, even if it's available, we wait. So what we avoid is at random. We avoid anything that doesn't give us real value. Because the easiest way to use points is usually the worst way. So now you've seen where points create value and where they lose it. So let's make this real with actual numbers, because this is where everything we just talked about actually shows up. This isn't about chasing perfect value or getting the absolute best deal every time. It's about one thing: removing real expenses, because that's what changes your budget. We were looking at a flight. Cash price was around $600. And the first option we saw was about 50,000 points. And this is where most people would stop and just book it. But we didn't. We compared. We looked at other options, and we found the same flight for about 30,000 points. That's 20,000 points gone if you didn't check. That's another flight or another hotel night. Same thing with hotels. We were looking at a stay that was about $250 a night. For 4 nights, that's $1,000. And using points covered that entire cost. No out of pocket, no stress. And that's not a small win. That's a removed expense. And this is the difference that most people miss. They think, I saved some money. But what actually happened is you removed a major cost completely, and that changes everything. Now let's compare that to using points the easy way. Gift cards, shopping. You might save $50, $100, but flights, hotels, that's hundreds, sometimes thousands. We're not just sitting here calculating every detail. We're asking one simple question: does this remove a real expense? If it does, that's a good use of points. So this isn't about maximizing every point. It's about maximizing what they replace, because points don't matter until they remove something that costs you money. So now that you've seen what this looks like, what it saves, so now it comes down to how you use it. So let's zoom out for a second, because everything we just covered only works when it's connected. Most people don't fail because of one mistake. They fail because nothing is connected. They earn points one way and they use them another way. There's no real system tying it together. So even if they do one part right, the rest fails. But what we've shown you is a system, not a trick, not a shortcut, a repeatable way to do this. Step 1, you earn the points without increasing your spending. Step 2, you plan when and how to use them. Step 3, you use them where they remove real costs. And now everything works together. Because if even one part is off, you overspend to earn points, or you waste them when you use them. And now the whole system breaks. You don't need more points. You need a better system. And this is the part most people miss. This isn't about being better at points. It's about controlling your biggest expenses. And once you do that, travel stops feeling expensive. So think about your situation. If flights weren't a problem, where would you go? If hotels were covered, what trips would open up? Because that's what this actually unlocks. Not more travel, possible travel. So when you look at this the right way, this isn't about getting lucky. It's about being intentional. You decide when to earn. You decide when to use. And now you control the outcome. So if you remember nothing else, earn with control, use with purpose, and this works. So now you've seen where people go wrong, what actually works, and how to connect it. So now it comes down to a choice. You can keep doing what most people do, earn some points, use them when it's easy, and hope it all works out in the end. And maybe it feels like it's working. But behind the scenes, you're losing value, you're missing better options, and you're not getting what you could out of it. Or you can take control of it. You earn with a plan, you use points with a purpose, and now every decision actually moves you forward. We don't use points just to use them. We use them to remove real costs. We don't look for convenience, we look for value. And that difference is everything. If you want to actually build this the right way, make sure you hit subscribe, because we're not just talking about this, we're doing it step by step in real situations. And I'll show you exactly how this plays out in real trips with real numbers. And I want to know, what's the last thing you used points for? Was it actually worth it? Or did you just take the easy option? Drop it in the comments, because that's where you start improving this. And if you do want to use the same tools we use, like Daily Drop Pro, I've linked everything below. Take your time, look through it, see what actually fits your situation. Use what helps, ignore what doesn't. And if you want to take this even further, we also use cruise casino strategies to reduce travel costs even more. But that's a completely different system. I break that down on my other channel, Cruise Casino Secrets. But here's where people still get this wrong, even after they understand everything we just covered. Because sometimes using points is the wrong move. And if you don't know when that is, you keep losing value, even when you think you're doing it right. So in the next video, we're breaking down the one decision that controls everything: when to use points and when to pay cash instead. Because getting that wrong is where most people lose the most money, because this only works if you use it the right way. And we'll see you in the next one. Bye now.